safe this morning. I agree with you that the communication from INEC has been tardy. It's not really what we expect from a high-level organization like INEC. We expect a seamless communication. I feel like by this, before even now, as at that night, they ought to have informed the different state INEC offices what to do and what they should do. In fact, the PRO should actually be telling us what they should do. Not just those people, they should have informed us. But we now have to wait till 2 o'clock now to hear a full briefing. For me, that is too long a time. When you create such a gap, a hiatus in communication, you allow rumors and speculations to crop in. And for you know now, as we're now, the public space is filled with all sorts of rumors, ignorance, and personal perception that can distort even the truth in when it comes. So the information management at level of INEC is honestly below par.
Now, we know that Ekiti, Niger, Taraba states are some of the states identified, but don't you expect that by now, this morning, we should have a chart to say, out of the 36 states and the FCT, these are the numbers of states that have complete...
One is scheduled for 2 p.m. today.
Yeah, so we should have all of those updates. Not necessarily a press, but from the tweets of INEC's office.
Battle ready to handle the elections today. Unfortunately, that news came out a few hours after they posted that. So the situation in the room is up and running. You can see personnel sitting by their computers with headphones, but then how come we're not getting the information and feedback that we deserve?
That's what I was saying exactly, that the information management, at least at the level of that INEC, in such a sensitive thing has been very, very poor, below standard. So because that situation should have been used to regularly inform us, make information out. This is what is happening. This is what is happening. We are showing this. And be really interacting with the populace. It's not just, go there, you read a prepared text, and then after that, you disappear. Everybody is angry. Twitter is a buzz. Social media, everybody is complaining. The corporates that are deployed are not happy. Yes, because again, in the first part of this discussion, I was able to see with them and rationalize why this thing could happen. But now, honestly, after that, this morning, I'm expecting a proper information management to reassure us that the electorates, the parties involved, that don't worry. We are on top of the situation. This is what we're doing. This is what we're going to do better. We should have that kind of interactive situation, state by state, polybooth by polybooth, local government by local government.
Now, we'll take a quick break, isn't it?
Yes, a quick break, and we'll be back. We still have Mr. Tuyi and Mr. Bolawa in the studio.
Glad to have you back. You're still watching Nigeria Decides. Now, gentlemen, before that short break, we were reflecting on the earlier conversation that we had in the studio. Now, another school of thought is saying that, well, since INEC has given room for this postponement, don't you think that to avoid the supposed plot of disenfranchisement, that we should have an extra timing or extension for collection of PVCs, or do you think that would just be another burden for INEC? Instead, they should just focus on the elections proper?
Logistical problem got us into this cul-de-sac. You want to compound the logistical problem? You're laughing. But, I've also got this to add to it. Failure, like I said earlier on, cannot be excused by any rational human being. The only thing an intelligent being does with failure will be to forensically examine it and use it as a good guide to where you need to be. I'm one who believes that INEC has dropped the ball big time, and I'm one who still believes that more so in a rapidly partisan environment, once you have the two main partisan organizations lambasting INEC now, criticizing INEC now, and getting on INEC's neck now, and alleging conspiratorial moves with the opposition. I'm sitting here as a Nigerian.
Shouldn't they keep their cool and let INEC figure things out? Because all of these pointing fingers, allegations, blame game, and a whole lot more could be distraction. It's just like a sane human being driving and you're hurling insult and all of those. They could be distracted some way, somehow.
I wish we could do it better than where we borrowed the system of government from. America tells me that we have borrowed something that is not only pecuniarily, financially expensive, but indeed emotionally and intellectually very, very, very anemic. Rabid partisanship is the best ticket you could have in any society, because it makes people to always speak below reason, logic, and what's in it for me to take as an advantage.
Interesting.
Again, talking about it, we cannot honestly be putting an extra burden on INEC now to say that, okay, go and be giving PVC to people. Now, the only consideration is to look at it that, you know, can we now allow some sort of either house-to-house campaign so that to keep, you know, showing up the base and keep the interest of people alive so that we don't have a kind of disenchantment, you know, and voters' apathy, you know, running through the whole system.
So that 2 p.m. meeting that INEC is supposed to have, do you expect them to touch on whether or not we'll have campaigns? Do you expect them to touch on whether or not we'll have any voter more?
You will have campaign. You know why you have campaign? You know why I'm confident that you will have campaign? Because the regulation says that there is a time limit to the ballot day that partisan campaigns must stop. So INEC has no control over that. Once the election has been postponed for a week, 1 week, the 48-hour rule relative to the Electoral Act and the extant regulation will still prevail. That's the law.
Again, we can't then assume that everybody understands the law. This is the area of competence and expertise of INEC.
Clarity
INEC at the level of information dissemination and voters' education should be able to clearly come out and inform people about that. So quite a lot of them may be ignorant, may not even be aware that that kind of law exists. So it's just how to manage this crisis. And honestly, what we should do as people is to find a way to cooperate and help INEC to deliver on this free, fair, credible, and transparent election. Because if that fails, the consequences might even not be too palatable. To manage those consequences may be a challenge. So from this point, after we might have expressed our anger, ranted about what we felt so bad about, we should be able to start to offer supportive mechanisms to help INEC to navigate this difficulty. Well, for me, beautiful. This is the first time in a very long time in an election that we cannot specifically say this person is going to win. It's quite tight, and that shows that.
And the percentage of people out there with partisan interest in this election is so relatively high compared to what we've had in the past. And until the fat lady sings, when INEC officially pronounces who wins, tension, tension, tension.
Absolutely, because the best thing that can douse this tension is to conduct the election and declare the result. That is what everybody is looking at. Any other thing, this gap will actually increase the tension. The Twitters, you know, the people that are partisan,
the Twitterati,
they will go on and then be attacking. Issues will come, you know. So the best thing that can douse the tension, conduct the election.
And let it be seen to be free and fair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tuyi Maibawandu. He is a political analyst, and of course, Mr. Gbolaoba, political analyst. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll have to take a short break, and when we come back, more on Nigeria Decides. Don't forget, our social media handles are still
Yes, it's at Plus TV Africa. That's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember to also comment as well on our YouTube page. Have a watching all of this live.
All right, we'll be back right after the break. Thank you for staying with us. This is Nigeria Decides. Now, we will be looking at the economic implication of the postponement on the elections. And to discuss this, we have Segun Sopitan. He is a financial expert and he is also of the Accountability, Candor and Transparency Network. It's good to have you in the studio.
Good morning, Segun. Now, when you also received the news of the postponement, what readily came to your mind? Now, this time you're talking business, because at the end of the day, we know Nigeria is a commodity-dependent economy, and such a shutdown of businesses on a weekend which we know thrives on business. What does this mean, really?
Yeah. So the first thing that I thought was, why the short notice? Because that's the real issue, if you take the politics away and all of that, if you want to postpone the elections because you have logistics issues and all that, it's fine, it's your decision, but you can't foist that on us at 2 a.m. of the day of the elections, because everything that is going to happen with regards to that day has happened already. You can't reverse it. Businesses have shut down, monies have been spent, schools have been closed. You can go on, the borders are closed. So the economy has basically been shut down. And, you can't reverse it. And I think that's the real issue for me. So that's what came to my mind.
But in what area should we now be looking at? Because now let's be perspective about it. Looking at the aviation sector, we know how much of flights coming in and going out of Nigeria would cost on the average.
Yep.
We look at even our customs as well, income generation would also be affected. And then small businesses.
Absolutely.
Really, how should governments now be reading all of these meaning, especially INEC, so that in every single step of their way this time around, they have to understand that there is a need to be accountable to the Nigerian?
Well, one of the ways that you can look at this is to just say, what's the cost of this to the Nigerian economy? Our GDP is roughly about $500 billion. Divide that roughly again by 365 days and you get an impression of what we've lost. Today, as an economy, we've thrown away 500 billion naira in GDP, in revenues. We're looking at the numbers now, not the impact on the lives, not the human angle, and the personal economies of people. Just looking at the numbers from a GDP point of view. You've lost today, and you have not only lost today, you're still going to lose next Saturday, because the elections have been postponed, so you're going to repeat this. So we're saying, 2 days of our GDP is gone forever. Can't get it back.
Well, we did speak to the head of strategy for Heritage Bank, and he did give us his perspective on this. Let's take a look at that clip.
Business banks and other businesses, even schools, force children to vacate on the name of midterm so that they can actually stay with their parents before the election. Now, the election has been postponed. Nigeria is a trading economy. For that to be disrupted like this, it means the loss cannot be underestimated. And like you said, it will happen again. To me, even in a normal environment, things like this actually lead to not less than 1 to 2% decline in GDP of an economy that's highly dependent on GDP, on trading. So there's no doubt business will be affected, but life goes on anyway. Knowing fully well that business on weekend in Nigeria Lagos, where socio-economic activities used to take place quite a lot of, other parties, other of wedding, other of funerals, and those are people who generate cash that actually flow into the financial system.
Today, the plan by banks is nobody will move around, talk less of trying to really make provision for people who go upload those ATMs. Now that has been cancelled, the implication of that. Most ATMs will be there running generator, running diesel, without cash to dispense, because eventually, later in the day, you see people going out. So there'll be loss in income because there's no plan towards it. So things like this there's no way. It has to be negative, but good enough. Banks have deployed quite a lot of alternative channels. Because internet will still be on. If you want to transfer, you can transfer, you can do all this. But the only thing is, like ATMs, like branches, that are affected. But good enough. The alternative channels, I think they are there.
Looking at listening to what he has to say, it's almost something close to what you have said. But he said something that I think is a bit too casual. Life goes on. How long can we keep being that casual about stuff like this when we know that the rippling effect might be a bit more damaging than the way he sounds?
Well, unfortunately, it's the reality. Whether we like it or not, the decision has been made, and life will indeed go on. But the point must be made that people that are making these decisions must factor in these things, must understand. INEC needs to understand that this decision is going to cost Nigeria at least 500 billion naira. Just that decision to postpone so late. So yes, life goes on, but for me, like I was saying earlier, there has to be some sort of a consequence for this.
So what sort of sentiment do you also think this would also throw into the forex market? Because we know that when you're having elections coming closely, the forex market also immediately reacts to that. So do we still expect the level of uncertainty and investment to continue just as much as we've seen in the last week?
Incidentally, quite unusually, the forex market, the naira has actually been appreciating over the last month or thereabouts against the US dollars.
But we understand that regularly elections come with sentiment,
with uncertainty. So now with the uncertainty that this decision creates, you will definitely see a movement over the next 2 or 3 days in the forex markets, because what this says to people is they don't know. We don't know what's going to happen next week. So investors will move their money.
Before the elections, just sometime in December, a lot of international companies that, somewhat played within the Nigerian foreign forex market.
But you bring your money into the Nigerian Stock Exchange year on year, in the last, even when we had our bust, you were still talking 25, 35% per annum returns. This is driven by inefficiency, but the investor, it's good for the investor because he can make his money. So yes, the uncertainty will drive the money out, but it's temporary. The money will come back.
And what do you make of this assertion by some school of thought that think that, well, within the business sector, you've been able to cash as much as possible from tradings that happened on Friday? There was a whole lot of transactions that happened on Friday. People bought foodstuffs. People had to transfer monies and withdraw monies and a whole lot more. So they don't necessarily think that it should be a bad market today.
Well, it's two sides of the coin. So yes, there's been a lot of business that was expected, that was planned for. But then what has now happened with this postponement is that people have spent money they wouldn't have spent on these things, that they would have spent on other things that would have driven growth and more business. So next Saturday, they're going to do this again. People went to supermarkets yesterday, like you said. People bought fuel. I mean, I'm sure you'd have noticed,
and a whole lot more
there were queues all over the filling stations because people were stocking up for their generators and for their cars because of the uncertainty. They will repeat that again next week, and that is waste. That money would have been spent on investment or whatever else that people were going to do that would have driven growth. So that money is down the drain.
And talking about what's led to us coming down here, where we are looking at a downturn in the business trends as well, we know that the late disbursement of funds for INEC is one of the contributory factors, although INEC hasn't come out to clearly say that has been the issue. But how do you say we move things forward? In our earlier conversation, we were talking about the way forward, ensuring that we have the appropriation bill sent as much as possible passage and all of that. Even pegged at over 100 billion naira for the election. How do you think we're supposed to be strategizing to counter such a situation where we'll continuously have postponements just because of late fund release?
I'm not sure that I support the late funds release argument, because INEC chairman himself, more than 2 weeks ago, categorically stated that they were ready. When the issue of the budget delay and all of that came up, he said it wasn't going to be a problem, that they will still find a way around it. So maybe he was being optimistic, and it's different now. To answer your question, I think that it's all about legislation. One of the problems is that there are no consequences for bad behavior. I keep saying this. In this country, you do something wrong or bad, you get away with it. It's impunity. So if, for instance, INEC knows that there is a law that says that if you are compelled to postpone the elections and it results in this is what is going to happen to you. Maybe I don't know, maybe a query, I always try not to go overboard with my suggestions and all of that, but there is no consequence. So we need to find a way to make sure that somebody takes responsibility and suffers a consequence for this.
But talking about suffering, and we're all talking about businesses and what they suffer, but INEC has spent monies, whether we like it or not, in preparation for today.
Absolutely.
So an equivalent of that money spent for today is going to be needed to do that of next week. And let's not forget that there was a drag between the National Assembly and the executive on this same issue of monies. Where's the money going to come from?
It's a very, very good question. So right now, what's going to happen is that at some point or the other, environment would have to be done because they're going to have to spend money again. This is completely extra budgetary. And we're talking of money in the billions. If you think about the money that INEC will spend moving sensitive materials from the CBN.
Across country.
8,800 wards, or if you like, 190,000
polling
units across the country. That's massive money in the billions, in the hundreds of millions. If you think about the money that the security infrastructure would have to be paid, deployment of police officers across the various polling units, they would have to be given some sort of an allowance. That's going to have to be repeated again. And you can go on and on. INEC will pay the youth corpers, they're going to pay their own staff, they're going to pay the other ad hoc staff. All of that money is gone, and we're spending it again next week. So, yeah, they'll find the money.
Let's talk about the positive side of this, the trickling effect this would have. Just like INEC personnel are being shuffled around the country, so the person in Lagos might go to Abia, and so they need accommodation, so they will be paying for hotels, they will be feeding. There are some beneficial aspects to this, right? Yeah. Well, even though today has been cancelled.
I struggle to see it as a benefit. Yes, some people will profit from this. The hotels will profit, but I tend to want to take the view that that money that the hotel is making is money that would have been spent on something else, and something that would have probably been more productive for the economy as a whole. So the hotel managers and all of them will smile to the bank, yes. But what about all of the lost business? What about the weddings? What about the supermarkets that have been closed? What about, I mean, you can go on and on about all the businesses that are losing money today that cannot be reversed.
So the losers are over.
The losses are way more than whatever benefits we would like to find, because you want to keep some sort of a positive narrative.
I think David asked that question before, but I want to put it in a different way. How do we make sure that we don't make the same mistakes over and over again? Because they say it's stupidity to actually do things the same way over and over, hoping for a different outcome.
That's a very difficult question. And I'll tell you why.
From a financial perspective.
There's really nothing you can do financially. This is a political issue, it's an administrative issue, it's a logistic issue. So the finance will find its way, and it will happen one way or the other. You waste money, you don't. But to prevent this, I have been saying to people that INEC is a part of our civil service, our public service, that is not known for its legendary efficiency. There's a lot of low productivity and inefficiency in our public services, and INEC is one of them. So if we want to prevent this from happening, we need to start getting the whole country. That's why I said it's a difficult question. It's a fundamental problem. This is one of the problems that Nigeria as a country has, a dysfunctional public service that government is sitting atop.
So you're saying that there's a tendency or a possibility of this happening over and over
again because
it is engraved in our system.
You don't have to be Methuselah. I'm sorry. You don't have to be, Aristotle, the great philosopher, to know that this will happen again. It will.
Wow.
Now, the head of strategy of Heritage Bank said that we should expect that these shutdown would affect about 1 to 2% of the GDP to the country, since we are dependent on most trading. Now, how do you expect things to change to meet this sharp twist of fate that we've experienced so far. Now, Monday to Friday, what do you think trading would be like in general, from the forex markets to a whole lot of markets across board?
There is going to be a lull in activities. I mean, everything is going to be low-key for this 1 week because, you know, decisions have been made. People have left places. People traveled from the north, shut their businesses down, came down south. Their intention was they will come for these presidential elections and then they'll go back maybe a week later. They're stuck now for 2 weeks. This 1 week is a period when business activities generally are going to go down. And that obviously, which is what I imagine that the gentleman was talking about, would have an impact on the GDP, because that's a week of. So we've been told from the report from the Nigerian, the NBS, that the GDP has grown 1.93% or thereabouts year on year, and we are seeing a resurgence. This will definitely be a dampener. I don't think it will be enough to significantly affect the eventual performance of the economy on the overall over the 1 year period, but you know, definitely things are going to be a bit low-key this week.
It makes me wonder. I mean, there are people who get very apprehensive during elections to even trade in stock because they do not know where, you know, the results will go. Will that also affect us one way or the other? Because now the stakes are higher than it has ever been in the history of Nigeria's democracy. Are we still going to see more people just hesitant? Like you said, there's going to be a law. Absolutely. But they're just going to literally just say, you know, let's put our hands in our pockets and just hope or wait and see what happens before we get involved.
I can give you an example. I sit on the board of a microfinance bank, and we were supposed to have a strategy session to plan for the next 5 years for our bank, and which could have resulted in some immediate implementation actions over the next 2 or 3 months. We had to postpone it because of the elections, because we said to ourselves, whatever you do, you are planning long term. The outcome of this election would have a very major bearing on that. So we postponed that, and now the elections have been postponed. You know, so that's more uncertainty. That's more of us sitting back and saying, well, we don't know.
And what about lendings to the small and medium enterprises and across board as well? Because the banking sector as well would also have its fair share of apprehension and want to take some due measure to also reduce whatever cost they might have to expend. So now that we are going into the election come next week, Saturday, how do you think we'll see lending go through for the next 6 months in general?
On the whole, on the overall, I don't expect any significant effect on those types of things, because the decisions that drive lending and all that is about viability of the projects that are presented, the ability of the potential borrower to provide adequate security, for comfort for the bank.
You know, when a new government comes in, it's usually a slower pace.
So what will happen? Yes. So what will happen over the next maybe 2 months? 2 months is for people to sit back and see, first of all, who's won. Once that decision has been made, once we've had the election and a winner has emerged and a loser has emerged, there will be an idea and a sense of what direction the economy is going to be going in, and business will pick up again. So yes, there will be a bit of a downplay of decisions, especially the long-term ones. So maybe, for instance, as a bank, I probably will want to be careful between now and the next 2 months, the kind of long-term loans that I commit myself to. Infrastructure loans, you know, maybe agriculture, 2-3 year loans, because I don't know who's coming in and what he may do or may not do. But once the elections are over, then an idea will come and people can move forward.
All right.
Thank you very much for speaking with us, Segun Sokoto. It's been a pleasure having you and talking business.
Always a pleasure to be here.
All right. Nigeria Decides will continue when we come back from the break. Stay tuned.
Glad to have you back. You're still watching Nigeria Decides. Now, trending on social media right now are pictures of INEC ADOC staff sleeping on the floor and not properly catered for. Joining us now in our Lagos studio is Ihechukwu Ibeji, public affairs analyst. Thank you very much for coming back. We also have Bola Olojade, public affairs analyst.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, if you have been following your social media, you would have seen that those pictures trending. Loads of celebrities have been commenting on it. In fact, the first time I saw that picture, it was from Toke Makinwa's handle, and she was saying, if this picture, if this is the true representation of what this picture is saying, then I have a problem with this country. These are young children or young people from Nigeria who have decided to dedicate their service to this country, and this is how we pay them back. Now, of course, I don't know if you have children who are old enough to go to university, but if that were to be your sibling or your child, what would be your reaction, especially when we're doing this in service to our country?
It doesn't even have to be my child or related to me in any way. Interestingly, I spoke with a couple yesterday. I had a couple in mind that I know of. And I knew he was going to be at this camp somewhere in Agbado, a primary school, where they have asked them to come together. And I sat about 10 o'clock when I spoke to this guy. Nobody has even come to say, oh, I know you guys are here. Nobody has come. And they had literally hundreds of them there. So this morning, he said, when it was about 11 o'clock, he and another friend went to look for a cheap hotel around where they just slept. There are a lot of people who either could not muster the fund, or do it, slept on the premises. The primary school they were refused to open the doors for them, so they couldn't even go and try to sleep on the chair or something. They slept on the grass in that primary school. So this is for real. It goes beyond just some pictures being bandied on the internet. It goes, this is for real. I'm telling you about somebody that I know, a couple.
Yeah, Chukwu, now, what INEC has said so far up until this morning when the news broke out, the official announcement was that everything was set. Now, if you have this type of sharp contrast in expectation, didn't you think that INEC was supposed to have then sent the information across to their ad hoc staff, which we have the NYC members, also participants, and a whole lot more? Didn't you expect that there would have been some level of communication to them, and then, you know what, just stay wherever you can or make do in this makeshift apartment, but not sleeping on the floor?
It's just despicable. I don't know what else to say. Disappointing, yeah. It's just shameful too, because this is out there in the social media and everybody's saying it. INEC at this point, who are the organs in charge of this, should be on top of this, releasing information, managing the situation. How do you manage the situation? You know where they are. They've been sent out. These corpers are the nucleus of the staff you've sent out to do the work for you. And they're out there, and it's clear that there are no preparations for them. And you need to manage the situation by ensuring that you begin to take care of them now.
So whether there was a suspension of this election or not, this was bound to happen. It means that there was no prior arrangement as to a sleeping plan, feeding, and even transporting them from point A to point B. I don't think we can actually excuse this on the grounds of, oh, it was, impromptu, there was an impromptu announcement or suspension, can we?
What we had is a monumental failure of logistics. It has never been this bad. That was absolute failure. You keep people, you said, oh, let's meet at 4 o'clock. And these are people you have spent money, you have trained them, so you have deployed resources, and you bring them. These are graduates. They're somebody's children, somebody's daughter, somebody's wife, and father and son. So you train them, you deploy them to those places. Nobody showed up to say, oh, we know you're here. Nobody bothered about what happened to them. Because apparently something has slipped through the cracks somewhere. I don't think logistics has been this bad. I can imagine what would have happened actually if we had proceeded with these elections.
Okay. So let me come out this way. Okay, these corpers have been sent out to different parts as ad hoc staff, and the assumption is that preparations have been made for them. And it's clear that it has not been made for them. And there are photos circulating all over the social media. And up till now, that particular incident, that particular case, if proved right, no INEC statement or even NYSC have come out to say, look, this is what...
So you think INEC does not even understand what role of corporate social responsibility lies, what public relations means at all?
They may understand, but I'm hoping that they are not overwhelmed by the situation of the thing. Yeah, I'm hoping, I believe, because I also want to feel that they had arrangements made for these corpers. I also want to assume that, okay, yes, there were some people who were put in charge for this and they did not deliver. But yes, even if they have
119,973 polling units across the country, there is a high probability that we had hundreds and hundreds pockets here and there spread across the nation. Now, if you remember, just on Thursday, was it Thursday or yesterday, there were also issues where an INEC official was saying that, well, those who pass through this training and will be participating as part of the ad hoc staff, well, those are the ones who have been selected. And you had a whole bunch coming out to say we've not gotten the message, and the response from the INEC official was that, don't worry, you get it, it's trickling in. And the question was asked 24 hours after, and you still tell us the message will trickle in. So
it just leaves a sore taste. You know, at the end of the day, when we go around the whole thing, it just leaves a very sore taste, like, 4 years after, and this is what is going on. And, you know, the point I still keep bringing back is the fact that no reaction up to this point with these incidents, these issues have come up. You need to attack these issues. It's perception management.
And you need to start.
Talking about perception, these young people, I mean, I know so many youth corps members who declined INEC's call to be an ad hoc staff. First and foremost, they're saying, oh, the money's too tiny and the stress is too much. And I don't think they envisage what's happening now as part of the stress, you know. So again, how encouraging is this for people who really would love to help, to be volunteers, to do this kind of, I mean, if there be another call for volunteers, do you think INEC might be left stranded somewhat?
That's a bigger problem. You know, logistics was why this failed. If we don't begin to address that logistics as from now, I could have shown you the text from that couple on my phone. He said, I'm done. So that person, you're not even going to see him next week. So that is what may start to complicate the logistic problem that is already very bad. So if some of the people, you treated them that way, you're not going to, obviously, you're not going to get back some of them next week. That's the truth. So we need to begin to manage that problem immediately, right now.
Because they form the nucleus of the staff that INEC have deployed. It's assumed that INEC don't have enough permanent staff who should do this work. And that's why they fall back on the pros to be returning officers. That's why they fall back on the corpers to be ad hoc staff. You will see an apathy of interest from corpers. If this is what it's going, if this is what it is,
and you know, another school of thought has also said that, well, why do you have to incorporate the core members if you're having training late? You can't even train your own staff, and then you're now adding this whole bunch as well. But let us just say, what if these young individuals decide not to show up for Saturday's election to assist? What do you think would happen?
It would be a major, it would be a major issue. It'd be a major issue. There's no need to even. There's no even need to. Already, one of the things I feared. You know, one of the things that previously I had said here, and I said it before that. Look, for me, they had so far as I think it was Wednesday or so. I said they had so far done okay. I did not want a situation whereby INEC would be the major issue, but now they are. All of a sudden, INEC, they are in the zone. They've become the cynosure of eyes, and some people are going to look away from the real issue of voting, and they're looking at INEC's preparation. They're looking at INEC, can they deliver? They're looking at what's going to happen. Are they going to come out and at the end of the day begin to behave phony? So all of a sudden everybody's saying INEC, even the parties are beginning to release statements say be neutral, be neutral. So it's an issue.
Even under this condition, how do you expect an individual not to be bought over by any politician who decides to play dirty this time around?
I think if INEC gets back on the board and start to manage the crisis, because it's actually a crisis situation, and start to manage right now, like right now, we can probably salvage some of the problems.
But are we right now people? Are we swing into action people? How often do we see ourselves doing that? I mean, generally.
Generally, we're not.
2 p.m. we're expecting an address from INEC. Do you think they would also touch on the treatment of this NYSC ad hoc members?
They better do.
The press will be there.
I expect them to be quite frank. To be quite frank here. At this point in time, and I said it earlier, and I said, I don't think they should be scheduling times for press releases or discussions. I think it should just be periodic. It should come out with communication information on what is being done step by step.
Feedback mechanisms.
Feedback is very important.
Talking about feedback, we have some feedback from our social media handles, Twitter, Facebook, and we have pictures coming in with messages. We're going to try as much as possible to read those messages, David.
And while it says, I think it's so inhumane and cruel for anyone to say they didn't force them. Yeah, the NYSC members voluntarily made themselves available as INEC ad hoc staff. INEC had just one job, just one. You don't subject people's children to this kind of unpleasant condition. Really sad.
It's a very sad one. This reel here on Twitter says the NYSC should stop allowing corps members to be used as ad hoc staff if there is zero provision for their welfare and accommodation. Really? Well, he touched on a point there.
And another person here is tweeting saying, I still maintain what I said about this program some years ago. Is this compulsory? Why do you accept to do this and put yourself in harm's way? Why do parents allow their children to do this? At INEC Nigeria, is this how you should treat people's children? 7 Nigeria.
That's from Omotala Jalade Ekende, actually. That's her handle. It's really sad what the situation is. Somebody here says, Sweet Girl on Twitter says, coppers are not slaves. And she puts a long list of it there. And she said, NYSC should address the horrific conditions corps members are subjected to by INEC. Unfortunately, the print has gone very dim, so we cannot see it. But quickly, guys, just short messages before we wrap this up. Going forward, should corps members be allowed to take part of this? Again, these corps members are human beings. Should they be treated differently from the main staff of INEC because, you know, they're ad hoc?
You see, there's a quick comment I would like to make. Because Nigerians, because they are so annoyed with the situation, are now making it look as if, why should corpers even do this in the first instance? It's a service. We all need this election to happen, and we need them. We have done this election 5 times, don't forget. It is not a big deal. These same people are being used for these elections. So it's a call to service, and as a corper, we're not sending you to a war front. This is a national service as well. So they should be able to do it. But on the flip side is, why are they treating them like this? These are graduates. And that is the part that we need to address. Between INEC and NYSC, they need to address it. We will always need corpers. It's easier to deploy corpers than to want to start recruiting on the street. So they are our ready-made resources. We must make use of them, but let's do it the right way.
I say with the spirit of patriotism.
Just before you land, I would like to quickly add that what exactly do you expect the line of conversation from NYSC, because at the end of the day, they still remain the guardians here, so to say. What conversations do you think they should be having with INEC, and a statement to also say we sincerely apologize for this situation?
First, I think that first and foremost, INEC should be, NYSC should be having a line of conversation with the corpers on the field, because they have their details. So all their various state secretariats should be engaging them to placate the whole situation and make some kind of ad hoc provisions. Second, I expect that NYSC should be discussing with INEC now to say, you know what, if we're going to continue to do this based on patriotic nature of the work and based on the fact that we need this to happen and make it work, we need to strengthen the rules of engagement. So instead of having stipends, maybe we need to have it as a law that says that if you're going to use our people, this is what is going to happen. They're going to include the payment for the accommodation, transportation. We are going to make that as a hazard allowance. We sign it off. So that when they are going, we know that we are giving them the allowance. Hey, look, it's important. This is very key. Because look at it, it's giving us a larger picture of whether NYSC as a program is important to us as a nation. And that's a flip side that we need to also look like. So INEC as an organization, I expect that INEC should also be reaching out to NYSC to reach out the corpers. And I expect that they should be discussing along the lines of beforehand concluding on how to make arrangements for these stipends as hazard allowance.
Damage control mode set in action.
All right, well, we want to thank you very much, Bolahan Olojede, Public Affairs Analyst, and Ihechiku Ibeji, also Public Affairs Analyst. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here in the studio.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Well, the elections are not holding, but there are several conversations that have to be had.
We've just touched on a few.
Yes, need to be asked. And, of course, I wish that we had INEC officials here in the studio so we could, you know, throw all those questions in their direction and let's see how best they
INEC might just maybe at the 2 p.m. broadcast address some of these issues and even more. Yeah.
Of course, our correspondents will be on ground to participate in that press briefing. In the meantime, we'll take a short break. When we come back, more on Nigeria Decides.
Hello there, many thanks for joining us on Nigeria Decides Now. The conversation continues to meet the main focus on the postponement of today's sadly expected election, which has been postponed. Now, the former chairman, Nigeria Bar Association of Ibadan branch, that's Kazim Badamasi, says, well, that the Independent National Electoral Commission has the legal backing to postpone elections. We have two lawyers in the studio to speak on the legal angle to this development.
Yes, we have Lulu Elegbe. He is an author. Thank you very much, Lulu, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Laborious Oshoma. He's a lawyer. Thank you for joining us, Laborious.
My pleasure, always.
All right, so obviously everybody's wondering, what exactly does this have a legal implication? In fact, I hear that certain persons have said that, look, there has to be some form of explanation for this. Does INEC have the legal backing to postpone elections solely on its own, or what does the Constitution have to say about this?
Okay, so Section 26, I believe, of the Electoral Act does give INEC the power to postpone elections. But at the same time, it has very clear parameters that are set for postponing the elections. Now, if I remember correctly, it's the only reasons, according to that act, are where INEC believes that there'll be a breach of peace if the election holds, in case of natural disasters. And then the next one is a bit vague because it just says any other emergencies. Any other emergencies could be anything.
It could be logistics.
Well, would logistics qualify as an emergency? I don't think it is, because that's just bad planning. Bad planning and emergency are two different things. In this case, to be fair to INEC, they haven't given detailed reasons yet for why this has happened. The only thing we have so far is the statement they've given. But if we are looking at the actual definition of the word emergency, there's a saying that your lack of planning cannot be my emergency. We've had 4 years to plan this election. Up until early this week, I think I saw an interview with the INEC chairman saying there's no way a postponement is going to happen. We're ready, everything's all good. And then 2:30 or 2 a.m. or 2:30 a.m. on the day of the election, barely 4 or 5 hours to the first polls opening, we hear that for logistical reasons, this is not happening.
Do political...
So, I mean, obviously they're lawyers.
An agency of government refuses intentionally to give information, people will definitely fill in the gap.
Why is it intentional?